Welcome to the John R. Just, Justice Loan Repayment Program Performance Measures Training, also known as JRJ. My name is Finesse Marino Rivera, and I am a JRJ Research Associate. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to learn more about JRJ's performance measures and how to report them in the PMT system. Today we will be focusing on the following components: performance measures reporting review, questionnaire structures, common reporting challenges, and frequently asked questions. At the end of this training, you should walk away with a better understanding of why BJA requires you to report performance measures and how we use this information. During the training, you'll get an in-depth review of JRJ's specific reporting and some issues we see in reporting. Now we'll look at an overview of performance measures and the reporting process. So what exactly is the PMT? The Performance Measurement Tool is the online data collection tool for Office of Justice Programs grant recipients. It is structured as an online questionnaire and is available year-round. The PMT contains lots of information and tools to assist you in your reporting, so let's take a look. This table outlines the type of data you'll be reporting each reporting period, when your reports are due in the PMT, and whether you also need to upload your reports to GMS. As you can see from the alternating values under the second column, you'll only report on the narrative questions in January, July, and during your last reporting period of grant activity, regardless of where that falls on the schedule. The PMT is only open for data entry during the month after reporting period closes. The PMT is accessible year-round for you to review and edit your data, generate reports, and more. But you will need to contact the PMT Help Desk to help you unlock reports as needed. The first page of each performance measure questionnaire outlines additional resources that may be helpful as you report. It includes reminders about the program's goals and objectives and lists contact information for the PMT Help Desk and state policy advisors if you need to reach out with any questions. We like to know each program's goals and objectives as a reminder of why we are asking you to fill out this questionnaire each quarter. The measures are ultimately there to assess your progress toward the JRJ's program's goals, to recruit and retain qualified local, state, and federal public defenders, and local and state prosecutors who commit to continued employment as public defenders and prosecutors. We also have a reporting tip on this slide. These reporting tips may appear throughout the presentation where we think there's an additional information that can help clarify PMT reporting. This one highlights that some grantees find it easier to track required data outside the PMT in smaller time increments, say a week or by month, and then add it all together when it's time to report in the PMT to get the reporting period totals. We strongly encourage you to use whatever approach makes it easiest for you to report your totals during each reporting period. What are performance measures? Performance measures are composed of inputs, activities, outputs, and outcomes. Inputs refer to program resources. Examples include grant funding, like where we ask about your program's funding allocation by partner in type question 1. Activities are the actions that convert inputs to outputs that eventually result in measurable progress toward the program's goal. These can include things like outreach development, recruitment and retention, and lastly, the number of new and previously funded applicants. Outputs are the accountable products or services that result from these actions. Outreach developments, for example, may result in the development of various outreach materials, which we ask about in the JRJ Performance Measurement Questionnaire. Outcomes lead to longer-term program goals. While outreach development, however, is a recruitment, it is not the end goal. Associated outcomes can, unsurprisingly, be found in the outcomes section at the end of the Performance Measure Questionnaire. This section includes items number of new applicants as well. Performance measures benefits to BJA include identifying areas of success and potential areas of improvement, to track grant activity and progress towards program goals, to understand how funds are being distributed, and to comply with the law. Performance measures benefits to grantees include areas for improvement to focus internal efforts, proactivity requests TTA to address challenges, and generate evidence of progress toward the program's goals. We will now conduct a quick review of the information that we presented. Please respond to the following polling questions on the right side of your screen. Number 1, how many days after the close of reporting period is your PMT report due? Is it A, 7, B, 15, C, 30, or D, 45? Also, for question 2, how do performance measures help grantees? Is it A, inform budget, strategic planning, and future funding? B, identify successes and areas for improvement? C, inform targeted TTA? Or D, all of the above? So for question 1, how many days after the close of a reporting period is your PMT report due? The correct answer is C, 30. And for number 2, how do performance measures help grantees? The correct answer is D, all of the above. Similar to the previous questions, please respond to the following polling questions on the right side of your screen. Number 1, how does your organization use performance measures? And number 2, do you have any questions about how BJA uses performance measures? Okay, so now we're going to move on and we're going to look at questionnaire structure. Performance measures have multiple structures and functions. The structure of the performances can be multiple choice, multiple responses, or open text. Also, the function of performance measures can vary. Functions include baseline questions, carry forward questions, and skip flow questions. As mentioned in the earlier part of the training, the questions in the PMT are made up of 2 main categories. The first is the quantitative program performance measures. This is where you enter the numeric data you collected over the course of the reporting period. For example, were new applicants collected during the reporting period? The second section are the qualitative narrative questions. These questions are open-ended and do not require a numeric response. The narrative questions that are answered during the April through June and October through December reporting period falls into a category. An example of this type of question could be, please describe any challenges with calculating or determining the least ability to repay, or what challenges did you face in completing your program goal during the reporting period? Remember, these questions are meant to capture the full experience you have with conducting activities with BJA funds, so the more information you provide, the better. The quantitative data you report is used to establish baselines, track performance against program goals, and create a nationwide picture of numeric data for BJA. Narrative questions are open-ended and give grantees a chance to express in their own words how their experience has been conducting program activities with BJA funding. Both of these categories are equally important for your reporting, and you should take every possible measure to ensure the accuracy and integrity of your data. Next, we will go over the specific types of reports that are generated in the PMT, and also common reporting challenges. Many of the questions in JRJ's performance measures questionnaire are related. During the data verification process, analysts examine related questions to ensure sites are reporting consistently. Below are examples of related questions. For example, if you report that there were no new applications during the reporting period for question 14, then you report 0 for question 16A. Similarly, if you report that there were new applications during the reporting period for question 14, then you will report a number of previously funded applicants, question 16, and the number of new applicants during the reporting period, question 16A. Many of the questions in JRJ's performance measures questionnaire ask for totals during the reporting period. However, many grantees often report the same totals across multiple reporting periods. For example, question 20 asks for the number of previously funded and new applicants during the reporting period. Also, please separate the values by the number of prosecutors, state or public defenders, and federal public defenders. Please ensure that the number given are for the current reporting period and not totals that you have provided in previous reporting periods. Grantees are required to provide a response to all mandatory measures. However, if a mandatory measure does not apply to the activities funded by your award, we ask that you enter 0 and then provide an explanation in the additional comment section once your report is complete. Upon viewing your complete report, you can select the blue Add Comments box. This will allow you to submit additional comments to explain why you are not able to provide data. A brief description such as, "We are still in our planning period," or "There was no activity during the reporting period," are sufficient responses. This information improves data quality by helping us understand the meaning of zeros reported in the system. BJA enhances data quality by assessing data consistency and accuracy, in addition to encouraging grantees to review and revise data entries. BJA also enhances data quality by site visits conducted by BJA grant managers and assessing data accuracy by identifying documentation to support PMT data entries. It is important to write well-defined goals and objectives to clarify your priorities and highlight criteria for success. The SMART mnemonic walks you through important dimensions of good goals and also objectives. They should be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. We recommend that you reevaluate your goals twice a year to determine whether they should be updated and use data to drive this process. When defining your goals, you want to ensure that they are strong. On the slide are 3 different examples. As you can see, the stronger goals including more information and the details are on the left, while others that need improvement and are very brief, lacking details, are on the right. We will now conduct a quick review based on the information just presented. Please respond to the following polling questions on the right side of your screen. Number 1, which is not a component of a SMART goal? A, measurable, B, assorted, C, relevant, or D, time-bound. Also, for number 2, how does BJA verify performance data? Is it A, quarterly data verifications, B, automatic PMT system validations, C, site visits, or D, all of the above? Okay, so for number 1, which is not a component of a SMART goal, the answer is B, assorted. For number 2, how does BJA verify performance data? The question is D, all of the above. Now we're just going to briefly discuss some frequently asked questions. And also just some helpful hints. So for error messages, follow the prompt to correct any errors or discrepancies. Then click the Federal Award page and review the data entry status and report status columns to make sure you have completed data entry. What if you lose data? The PMT will time out after 30 minutes of inactivity to avoid re-entering data. Click the Save button before leaving the system or when you are finished entering data. What does the question mark mean? On the data entry page, each measure in question underlined in blue is a link to more information. Click on or hover over the links throughout the page for a definition and instruction. Edit submitted data. If your report is locked, contact the PMT help desk to request that the report be unlocked. In order to update information, it is crucial for PMT users to make sure the profile page has correct and complete contact information. Please update information in the grants management system first, and then update in PMT. Lastly, red buttons. Red buttons are used as indicators to the action required on that page. Select the red buttons throughout the page, and it will complete the task at hand or take you to the next step. Here is the BJA PMT Help Desk contact information. Our office hours are Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, except U.S. federal holidays. We strive to return everybody's email and phone call within 24 hours, so please don't hesitate to leave a voicemail or email even after business hours. We'll leave the webinar open for about 5 to 10 minutes so you can download any handouts attached or use the Q&A box if you have any questions. A recording of today's training and other user materials and resources will be posted online. On behalf of BJA and the PMT team, thank you for your time, dedication, and hard work. This concludes the presentation.